Hey everyone, this is Steve from GamersNexus.net, and today we are looking at Be Quiet! Dark Rock Pro 3, and this cooler was shipped to us by Be Quiet, the German-based CPU cooler and power supply company. They wanted us to look at it. It is the most monolithic, imposing cooler for a CPU that I have ever seen. It is quite the masterpiece here, a true work of art that perhaps Batman himself would install on his CPU. And this cooler will run through the specs first and then look at the benchmark performance. It is about $110, $106 to $110, pretty damn expensive, but it is a high-end air cooler, which we often say will outperform low-end liquid coolers, so this is a test of that statement. The cooler is compatible with effectively all Intel CPUs from 775 sockets onward up to 2011, and it is compatible with AMD from way back to 754 all the way up to FM2+, so it will work on basically everything. The unit ships with two fans. One is internal in between a dual aluminum tower cooling rig, and the internal fan is 135 millimeters and the external fan is 120 millimeters. That is the one that pushes that pulls the air into the unit, and then the middle fan pushes it out the back. So that's our fan setup. They are connected fully with PWM and actually will connect to each other through a daisy chain so that you can only use one CPU cooler slot on the board, which is a nice consideration by Be Quiet. The unit is rated for 13.2 decibels at 50% of the RPM, and it goes up to 26.1 decibels at 100% RPM, and the RPM range is 1400 to 1700 for both fans. They use a fluid dynamic bearing, meaning that it is rated for a higher lifespan. It'll get a bit whinier when you first use the unit, but that whine dies down pretty quickly as the bearings are burned in their first cycle. The lifespan is rated at 300,000 hours at 25 Celsius. Now you're going to get a little bit of degradation with the heat consideration, but it's still pretty high. All of that noted, we can then look at the actual aluminum and copper components. The cold plate of this CPU cooler is a mirror finish. It's very shiny, in fact scarily shiny, because you will see yourself in the mirror, and that is made out of a copper base plate. This is connected to 7 heat pipes at 6 millimeters in diameter, making this cooler the largest cooler we've ever tested on the bench, and 7 heat pipes is a damn lot of heat pipes. Now you might be wondering why they don't do fewer heat pipes at 8 millimeters versus more at 6. Having more heat pipes like this will actually give the unit a better performance potential with larger CPUs like the 2011 socket that take up a physically larger square area. You do lose some of that performance when testing with things like the 1150 and 1155 series like we have done here, because the CPU won't fully saturate that cold plate. The cooler is physically very large. This is 150 by 137 by 163 millimeters, which means it will have limited compatibility on smaller cases, as a lot of these smaller cases are limited to 160 millimeter height of coolers. Looking at installation before benchmarks, installation on this unit is one of the most painful processes I've ever had the misfortune of running into with a CPU cooler. In fact, the instructions aren't 100% clear. What you should do if you buy this is separately prepare the CPU cooler before placing it onto the board. What I mean by this is you mount your backplate to the motherboard. You snap the screws into place with these plastic snaps that are included so they won't slip out, and then you mount the rest of the components to the cooler, and then you mount your motherboard to the CPU cooler. That sounds a bit backwards, but it's the best way to do it in this instance, and you can see it in the video I'm showing here. So that's sort of the best way to go about this. If you don't do it this way and you try to mount the CPU cooler and then screw on the nut that holds the bolts into place, you are going to be 1, busting your knuckles on copper, and 2, spending an hour doing it, and probably will have a somewhat bent board at the end, because it's very difficult to properly adjust the corner screw because of the heatsink placement on the motherboard for the VRM heatsink. So do keep that in mind. Not so bad if you do it the way I explained. You should probably do it with the board hanging over a table or something like that to make your life a bit easier, or get a hand model with small hands to do everything for you, because those are abundant, as we all know. Looking at the benchmark results, all the test methodology is in the article linked in the description below. Please click on that and read through the article for more details on this, and also to see the test methodology. So stock performance, this cooler, just kind of jumping straight into it, hands down takes the first place Best of Bench award for air coolers on our bench. It is beaten out strictly by closed-loop liquid coolers, including the likes of the X40 on extreme settings. It actually beats the X40 on silent, and the X60 on silent extreme, the H90, H110, and Antex 1250, which is on the next chart that I'll be showing. The Be Quiet Dark Rock Pro 3 is a 49 Celsius stable temperature, ranking just above our previous Best of Bench Silverstone Argon AR01 with 2 fans at 49.2 or 1 fan at 50.6 Celsius. Using the aftermarket compound, which is much better in my opinion, the controlled compound produces a 49.97 Celsius load temperature, which means it is just slightly above the Argon AR01 again and below Antex 1250 on silent settings. Two things to note here. One, the compound that ships with the Dark Rock Pro 3 is very runny. It's kind of liquidy, and because of the very painful installation process, that means it's going to get all over the place where you don't want it when you're installing the unit, and it's not going to be a perfect install. I actually had to do this 3 times to make sure I had the thermal paste the way I liked it. I would recommend getting something like what I use for control, which is an Antec Silver something or other, or Arctic Silver is also very good because those are going to be more solid and they'll stay in place better. Second thing to note, this unit is very expensive. It's $110. That places it at the same price, actually more than Antex 1250, which is our current Best of Bench for everything in terms of CPU coolers, and it places it a little bit under the new NZXT X61 and a little under the NZXT X60 and just above the X40. So why then would you want to buy Be Quiet's Dark Rock Pro 3? Well, it's really 3 things. It's for silence, it's for aesthetics, and it's for endurance. In terms of silence, I don't have an objective decibel test for you, unfortunately, but subjectively it is quieter than all the other air coolers on the bench, and it is quieter than all of the liquid coolers when they are on extreme settings, and some of them when they're on custom settings. The Dark Rock Pro 3 is about tied with the Antec 1250 on silent and X40 and X60 on silent, but it's going to be quieter than the Corsair H110 and H90 for sure, by actually a long shot. Beyond that, the aesthetics, you're paying for a very cool look. It's a big cooler and it looks good in the case, so if you have a custom build you're doing that demands something like this with similar performance to CLCs and you really don't care about that extra 1 to 3 degrees Celsius you can get with a 1250 or an H110, then this is your best bet because it's going to look better for your type of build and it performs fairly similarly and about the same level of silence when they are on their silent settings. Third, you're buying this for endurance. It has a 300,000 hour rating of life on the fans. That is going to last a lot longer than most of these tubes will, or the liquid on units like the H100i, because it doesn't have to deal with evaporation or age over time, and if you leave the system alone for a while, it'll be fine too. So if you want something longer lasting and that requires less maintenance in a couple of years, then this is a good bet. Now, in terms of value, you really should be buying an Argon AR01 if you're trying to build on more of a budget. It's $35, so that is 1/3 of the price, and it performs effectively identically. It is within margin of test error, so you do the math. You know, if you want a cheaper build, get the AR01 if you can handle slightly louder noise and you don't care for the cooler to last for your entire life. It's still, you're going to get a couple years out of it, and that's good enough for most people. If you want liquid, you can go with a 1250 for $100. You can go with an X40 for, I don't know, something like 80 to 90, I think. X61 for 140. So there are a lot of options out there flanking the DRP3 in terms of liquid. That is all I have to say about this. Click on the link in the description below for full details and more of my opinions, and I will see you all next time. Peace.